Daisy Strongin is a 24-year-old woman, a wife and mom, who attempted to transition into a male at the age of 18. She started on testosterone and then got a double mastectomy, all to live out this idea of finally being a man. Now she is not only a wife and mom, but a Christian. And so she is here to tell us her incredible story. And there are so many lessons for parents in this and also for young people. And this is part one of the story. It was a long and very fruitful conversation. And so there is going to be a part two as well. But today is part one of her testimony. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com. Use code Allie at checkout. That's goodranchers.com. Code Allie. Daisy, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, Daisy was the center of the recent PragerU documentary on detransitioning. And you reached out to me on Instagram. Of course, I saw the documentary and I saw you there, but then you reached out to me on Instagram and you told me a little bit about your story, specifically about your faith, and then a little bit about how kind of relatable may have played a role in all of that, a small role. And so I wanted to have you on to talk to you about your story and all of that. So I'm kind of going to just give you the floor. I want to back up as early as we can in your life. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
I had a pretty normal childhood. My parents divorced when I was around 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was around 9 years old, I started having like self-esteem issues. I remember I started seeing a therapist whenever I was 9, mostly talking about the self-esteem issues. I don't know exactly where they originated from because, like I said, I had really good parents. They didn't, plant in the idea in my head that I was not good enough or that I was stupid or anything. I just kind of believed that about myself, and I think it came from comparison to other kids, I guess. And
do you have siblings?
yes, I have an older brother. He's my half brother. So he's like 9 years older than me. So he moved out when I was like about 9, 8, 9. So,
Okay.
But yeah, I was seeing a therapist at the age of 9, and then fast forward to when I was about 11, I got my first laptop, and I had basically unrestricted internet access, and my parents, like, they didn't know what the consequences of that would be at the time, because this was like 2009. So pretty much right away, I spent just a lot of time online and on YouTube. And even before I had my own computer, I spent a lot of time on like the family computer, and just I had a very like kind of ADHD brain where like I always really enjoyed going online because it was just like an infinite massive information and entertainment. I could just go to the next thing and the next thing and the next.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point in middle school where I would basically just spend all day online, and my parents were concerned about that.
Even at school?
Not at school, but whenever I would come home, I
Yeah.
would.
So you're like addicted to it.
Yeah,
kinda.
pretty much. And I didn't have a lot of friends. I had friends, but I wasn't that social. I've always been like a more introverted person, just want to like stay in my head in my own little world. And that mixed with just the depression and the mental issues that I was having, and also just being in middle school.
Yeah.
Just that's a that's a time of weirdness and
Awkwardness,
yeah, and
totally.
new feelings. And it was, it all became very heavy on my mind.
Just feeling like uncomfortable with yourself or bad about
Yeah,
yourself. That's what was
yeah,
weighing on you.
definitely. Especially as I reached like eighth grade, I just noticed that the separations between boys and girls started to become a lot more obvious. Because in elementary school, I had a lot of guy friends. Like I mostly was friends with the boys, and I did not problematize that. But then in eighth grade, I not only found myself just like wanting to socialize more with boys, but also becoming attracted to boys. And also, that's probably when the feelings of wanting to be a boy really started to amp up. And I don't know what caused this, to be perfectly honest. I would say I'm kind of an anomaly in terms of like detransitioners, because I don't have any like sexual trauma. Like
Yeah.
I was not sexually abused, thank God.
Right. Yeah, that is a common thing that I hear a lot from uh, females who have tried to transition, so-called, into a man,
Yeah.
detransition, is that there's almost always a sexual trauma component. But that's not your story.
No, and I will say, the feelings of being a boy didn't just come out of nowhere in eighth grade. They go back to when I was like probably 4 years old. I remember watching movies and just wanting to emulate male characters and not relating to female characters at all. And I remember even like saying to my parents, I'm a boy. Or I would say, like, I'm half boy, half girl, things like that. And that was like, obviously way before I ever knew about what transgender was. So I don't know where that comes from exactly. Been trying to figure that out, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
So you said that you were seeing a therapist at the age of 9
yeah.
because of feelings of inadequacy, not liking
Yeah.
yourself, maybe even depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And were you seeing that therapist continuously throughout elementary and middle school?
I saw him for maybe 2 years, and then I saw a, a different therapist in eighth grade. Um,
Were they helpful, would you say?
yeah, I guess. I mean, it's always helpful to kind of vocalize your feelings and to have someone maybe like give a different perspective on it from like an
Yeah.
outsider perspective, and someone who obviously is a psychiatrist who could maybe help you understand where these feelings are coming from. But I still just felt like, just very much like, I have no idea, like there's something wrong with me. I just felt very like alien, and I know like that's normal for middle schoolers to feel that, but I just felt like it was even more so, because I was like, why do I want to cross dress all the time? Why do I want to have short hair? Why do I want to look like Justin Bieber and not like I was I
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was all just, I felt like I was very strange in a way, again, that I problematized.
Yeah.
And I started questioning my sexuality. I was like, does this mean that I'm lesbian? Because I'm not, but I want to look so butch. And, that's how you know, at the time I was like, that if you're a girl and you want to look like a boy, that probably means that you're gay, but I'm not. I was just
Yeah.
very confused.
Yeah. All right, let me take a quick pause to tell you about our first sponsor for the day, and that is 7 Weeks Coffee. 7 Weeks Coffee is providing excellent coffee and also promoting godly values. They're unapologetically pro-life. 10% of every sale is donated to a pregnancy center across the country. In their first year, they've raised over $1,000. They are now supporting over 750 pro-life organizations that are offering all kinds of counseling and resources for parents in crisis, moms who are pregnant, to ensure that they feel loved and supported enough to be able to choose life for their child. This is premium coffee. We love it in our home, and we just love that they are saving preborn lives with our dollars. So go to 7weekscoffee.com. Let your coffee serve a greater purpose. Use code Allie to save 10% on your order. That's 7weekscoffee.com, code Allie, 7weekscoffee.com, code Allie. Were you scared of those feelings?
At first, yes, because again, at this time, this is like 2012, so I didn't know what transgender was. I mean, I knew, but it was like very like taboo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think I knew that trans men existed. So yeah, and I kind of went back and forth for a while between like, so in 8th grade, I very much looked like a boy and kind of wanted people to think I was a boy. And then when I entered 9th grade, which was high school, I was like, okay, I need to stop doing this. I want a boyfriend. Like, I want to make myself look more feminine. And I did enjoy that in a way. There were times where I felt pretty but those feelings were still there, and I would still like try to cross dress in private.
Yeah. So it was beyond feeling like you're a tomboy, because that's one thing where girls are like, yeah, I just don't like dresses and I like to play sports. But there was something almost, you felt like it was a subversive desire that you had to not just be a little bit more masculine, but to dress like, to cross dress.
Yeah.
Right? Like you felt like you needed to kind of keep it secret in a way.
Yeah. Especially when I saw how just it made me like, when I did cross dress like and have short hair in 8th grade and, you know, try to look like a boy, it didn't exactly help my social life. It kind of led to some bullying. So I was like, okay, I should probably just fit in. It's fine. Like, I'll grow my hair out and, you know, I'll just change myself. And so, yeah, freshman year, I was kind of more feminine. And then I just got the urge to cut my hair again in like sophomore year.
Were your parents guiding you through this at all, or were they kind of just like, do what you want?
Yeah, I think they thought it was kind of probably weird when I wanted to cross dress all the time or most of the time. They didn't like say anything like, you have to stop this, but they probably thought it was odd. And my mom really encouraged me in my femininity when I seemed to become more interested in that. And I do remember I really had to beg her to let me cut my hair for that second time because she actually was worried that I was going to start like wanting to transition, because this is in like 2014. So, and this whole time I'm just like chronically online.
Yeah.
So,
and I was going to ask about that, because you kind of teased that a little bit, how you got your laptop when it was 2009 and you were kind of addicted to being online. What do you think, like, what effect did that have? And like, what sites were you visiting?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time on YouTube and Tumblr. I originally got on Tumblr because I was a huge nerd and I really liked Doctor Who and Sherlock, and I really liked, you know, I would spend time in like those fandom communities. I wasn't at all looking for gender related stuff at first. But then the gender Tumblr stuff and the Doctor Who Sherlock stuff, there's some intersection, because I think that a lot of the girls that were in those fandoms also felt like they didn't fit in and were just kind of outcasts. And a lot of them happened to have the same weird gender feelings, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
About that world.
Yeah. But I basically came across something that was defining this term called genderqueer. And I was like, what is that?
Like this is 2014 that
13, I think.
2013 that you,
2013.
so like right when you were in high school you came across this? Okay.
I think I was a freshman.
Okay.
And it was basically saying genderqueer is when you feel like you're neither male nor female, or like you're a bit of both. And I really resonated with that. Like, oh yeah, I do feel like I'm both, because I do like to look masculine, but I also like to look feminine. I must be genderqueer then, because I have this like variance of, different ways of wanting to express myself. And at first I was like, this isn't gonna like take over my life or anything. I'm just gonna resonate with this privately. I'm not gonna like go and change my pronouns. I don't want to deal with that. But I'm glad I found this term, and I feel a lot less bad about myself, because there are other people who are like me, who have similar interests, who actually feel the same way. So at first I was like, this is a very positive thing. And, I was naive and had, I've always been like a very open person. So the idea of someone identifying as both a boy and a girl, it's not like that was weird or nonsensical to me. It really felt like me. So that's kind of when it started.
Yeah.
And then I kind of fell into a rabbit hole of all of these other like different made up identities regarding gender, and people, it's not like I was groomed by adults to believe I was trans. It was other people, it was other young people, mostly
Online.
young girls, who were sharing their own interior experiences. And again, it did not seem like a negative thing at all, but I've always been kind of an obsessive person, and I got a little obsessed with it. So,
And you're talking about stories that you were reading online?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the idea of identifying as not a girl, I guess.
Yeah. On like Tumblr mostly, Reddit, YouTube?
Yeah, Tumblr and YouTube, because then I started watching YouTube videos of people documenting their transition. So the idea of me being a trans guy was still like, oh, I'm not that, because I like to look pretty and I don't hate my body. Like when I went through puberty, I was fairly indifferent about the changes that were happening. So I didn't really have physical dysphoria, and I was attracted to boys. So there were a lot of red flags that I kind of ignored, of like, hey, maybe this actually doesn't make any sense for you to identify as a boy. But if you take that and, oh, I've been saying I wanted to be a boy since I was 4, that's very much in line with the narrative. And the feelings were very consistent, and I just felt more like almost like a sense of euphoria when I looked in the mirror and thought that I looked like a boy. So, there were a lot of things that I started connecting the dots. And as I sort of dove into the gender community, I guess you could say, it started to become I started to convince myself that like I'm probably trans, because there were a lot of influencers saying things like, if you think you're trans, you probably are. And just that being trans is something that is inerrant and or inherent and
Mm-hmm.
spiritual and can't be changed. And that's also, unfortunately, this is probably 2014, 2015, when I started to hear things like, if you're trans and you don't transition, you'll probably off yourself at some point.
Mm.
Um, which is so upsetting because
Yeah.
nobody has the authority to tell someone that they're going to kill themselves
Yeah.
or like,
It's almost like a threat, you know, but it's like, it's a
yeah,
different kind of threat because they're not saying, I'm going to do something to you, but if you don't do this, you're going to do this to yourself, which
yes.
sounds
And
a
I
lot
was
like
having,
Satan, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not doing well mentally. I haven't gone that much into my mental health state in high school, but I was very depressed and still very like had a lot of self-loathing and just so the idea that I might kill myself one day, it's not like it was out of the question. I felt like I was very emotionally weak and vulnerable at that time.
Mm.
And I knew what it felt like to have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So hearing that, it went in like 2 years, it went from being just like this silly little label that I felt like fit me and just like kind of a personality trait, really,
You're right.
to this is life and death.
All right, let me tell you about Adele Natural Cosmetics. I have loved this company for a very long time. I switched to using their products a few years ago, all their skincare, and when I'm not on camera, their makeup as well, because I love that all of their products are made with holistic, natural ingredients. There's nothing fake in them. There's nothing I can't pronounce. Everything is from God's medicine cabinet. This is a family-owned company that was started several years ago because the owner, Arlene, had her own health problems and she wanted to make sure that the things that she was putting on her body were actually good for her. And so I've seen a really big difference in my skin, a more even tone, a lot more moisturized. I really encourage you to check them out. They're a pro-life company, and so you can feel really good about spending your money here too. Go to AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, enter code Allie for 25% off your first time purchase. That's AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie for 25% off your first time purchase. AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie.
2015 is when I came to the conclusion that I needed to transition fully.
And you're how old at this point?
17. I had just turned 17.
Okay. And did your parents know that you were going through this in your head?
I think, yeah, I remember coming out to my dad as genderqueer in like 2013 and him just like not understanding it at all. He's like, I don't know why you're telling me that you're a tomboy. Like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah,
and
he didn't know what to do with that. Like,
yeah, and I was like, I really wanted them to get it. I really wanted them to understand me. But
and did you still have a therapist at this point that you were telling these things to?
yes, so I've seen 3 different therapists in my youth. There was the one at 9, there was one in 8th grade, and then there was one that I started seeing from age like 15 to 22, actually. So I saw her for a long time, and I did articulate these feelings to her. And she actually did not affirm me, but she also didn't say like, no, you're not trans, or no, your feelings are wrong, which I think honestly is the job of a therapist to do. You know, she would ask me like, where do you think these feelings come from? She wasn't quick to say like, yes, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't do this. And so, you know, I told my parents in 2015, like, hey, I think I'm actually a boy inside. And I tried my best to describe it. And again, they just were like, so you're a masculine woman. Like, just be a masculine woman. And I was like, no, I'm not a woman at all. And I tried desperately for them to get that because these were really strong feelings that I had. And I really I was very nervous that they would react negatively, and I wanted to try to frame it in a way that made them sympathetic to it. Um, and overall, their reaction was uh, negative. They were pretty, especially as I actually started to take steps to medically transition, they were pretty horrified by it.
Yeah.
They did not know what to do to stop me, though, because once I turned 18, like, they didn't really have the authority to keep me from getting on testosterone, and
Did you have the money to do that yourself?
it wasn't expensive.
Mm.
It was like, I think I spent like $60 getting it.
And did you have to get a sign off from a psychiatrist?
No, not for the testosterone.
Really?
No.
You were able to just, where did you go to get it?
I went to a clinic in Chicago. It wasn't Planned Parenthood. I don't know if I should say the name of the clinic, but
okay. I was curious if it was Planned
was-
Parenthood. So it was just a clinic. And you just walked in and said, I want testosterone, and they gave it to you?
yeah, pretty much. So I called and I
Wow.
made, I called them and I said, hi, I'm interested in going your informed consent route, which is basically the route where you have to be 18 plus, but you don't need a letter from a therapist. And they said, and they made an appointment with me, and I remember it was August 18th, 2016. And I was like, well, it's exciting that I have the appointment, but it's probably like super psychoanalytical. They're probably not going to give me the hormones right away. And then I went in, and I think they asked me, like, how long have you been identifying as trans? Do you have gender dysphoria? And I was like, yes, I feel disconnected from my femaleness, which was true. You know, I didn't lie to get what I wanted. And yeah, so they not only prescribed me the hormones, but I did my first shot there because they were like, well, you need to know how to do this. And they were very congratulatory. And I remember walking out, and like there was another trans person waiting there being like, congratulations. And everyone was just like very happy for me, very affirming.
I could see how that would give anyone euphoria.
Yes.
Especially if you're someone who felt kind of like displaced in their own body for so long and felt not affirmed in a lot of ways. To finally feel like, wow, people are congratulating me for living authentically. This is going to solve my problems. I could see how that would be attractive.
Yeah. And the reason why I went on testosterone so quickly, because I had been identifying as a boy for about a year at that point.
And you had tried to change your pronouns in your name?
Yeah, I changed my pronouns in my name as soon as I like realized that I, was trans or thought I was trans. But I wanted to go on hormones so quickly because I was not passing. I did not, my voice was very feminine, and strangers were still calling me Miss, and people were tripping up all the time and calling me she. That's when I started to problematize my body and my God-given traits, and feeling like, okay, everything about me is wrong. Like, not just psychologically or socially or whatever, but physically. Like, my breasts are a birth defect, and my voice is wrong. I was born in the wrong body. I should have been born in a male body. And I did not go through a male puberty, and that's a huge problem. I'm 18 years old, and I look like a 12-year-old boy, if anything. So I felt like there was a sense of urgency to get on hormones and to fix the horrible problem that was my body.
All right, let me tell you about Cozy Earth. We love Cozy Earth. I love their loungewear, their blankets, their sheets. We've got it in multiple rooms in our house, our guest room, our room. We just love our Cozy Earth sheets. They are so soft, so luxurious. I love that they're temperature regulating. They keep you cool all year round when you're sleeping. And they have an awesome discount going on right now for relatable listeners. You can save up to 35% on your first order. This is a great gift. This is a great gift for yourself if you've got a loved one with a birthday coming up. Luxurious sheets, great wedding gift too. If you're looking at some weddings later this year, then you should consider getting them the gift of Cozy Earth. Absolutely love all their stuff. Go to cozyearth.com, use code relatable, save up to 35% on your first order, all backed by a 100-night sleep trial. That's cozyearth.com, code relatable, cozyearth.com, code relatable. So you started on the testosterone when you were 18, and like, how exactly does that work? I've had a few detransitioners on the show, and they've kind of said different things, but like, did they just send you home with a box of testosterone shots and you self-administered those? Like, did you have an endocrinologist or anyone who was checking up on you to make sure like you weren't injecting them all at the same time or anything?
Yeah, I had a couple of follow-up meetings with an endocrinologist, but they didn't watch me particularly closely. I do remember at one point I had asked to like increase my dosage because I felt like it wasn't working quick enough. And so I was injecting, I don't remember what the exact amount was, but then I came back to get my levels checked and they said that, oh, this is way too much. And if you inject too much, then it's going to convert back into estrogen actually. So they really were also, they were not focused on the scientific side of it, as like they were also obsessed with the aesthetics. Like I remember asking me like, so what do you want to look like? Do you want a beard? Do you want to be super buff? I'm like, it's not possible for me to be super buff, first of all. Like I tried. It's not but it was like the way that they viewed bodies, it was like they're so customizable, you know?
Yeah.
And I just remember like some red flags going up. Like one of the doctors that I saw at one of my follow-up visits went by dinosaur pronouns, like sore self.
What?
Yeah, and I was like,
Did you have to try to like respect those pronouns? Like, oh my goodness.
it was like one
Sounds like a
one of the
joke.
options. It was like, oh, I like he, they, or
Oh.
sore. And I'm like, come again? She's like, yeah, like dinosaur. I was like, valid. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're told that that has to be valid, just as valid as anything else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I think I was probably 19 at that time. And I remember thinking, that's a little kooky. Like
Much for you.
you're a doctor.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it was definitely a weird experience there. And then 2 years on the hormones, is when I had the double mastectomy at
And
20.
were you in college? Did you have a job?
Yeah, I was in college and I had a job. I really wanted to just like blend in.
Yeah.
I didn't transition for attention or anything. I just wanted to, you know, make myself look as male as possible and be stealth, which is basically when
Right.
nobody knows that I'm trans and everyone just sees me as a guy.
Yeah. And how did you feel after you started going on testosterone mentally and physically?
Really good in some ways. So, oh, I forgot to mention this. This is pretty significant. So, at the end of high school, I became very suicidal and was starting to have like a plan. And I went to the hospital and I was in an inpatient program and I was identifying as trans at this time, but I
Because
wasn't.
you attempted suicide, or just because you knew that you were about to try?
Yeah, I knew I was about to try, and I told my mom about it, and she was like, "Okay, that's it. We're taking you to the
Oh,
hospital."
thank God you told your mom.
Yeah. I mean, I was having like a mental breakdown, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I was identifying as trans. I was not on testosterone yet. So I still looked basically like a female or maybe like a very young boy. Um, and I spent 6 days in this inpatient mental health facility. And none of the doctors there asked really, like, they knew I was trans, but they didn't relate that to any of my other problems. They kind of just seemed to see that as just like, oh yeah, that's normal, that's valid, and literally 2 months after I was released is when I went on hormones, and they also prescribed me Zoloft, like a high dose. So I went on Zoloft and went on testosterone at the same time, and nobody really bat an eye at it or, questioned if maybe that would have adverse effects. I was manic. I was very, I felt like a different person. I felt like I had a very different psychology because I
Wow.
think the testosterone gave me a lot of energy.
Yeah,
I was
that's what I've heard.
uncontrollably angry in a
Gosh.
way that I had never felt before. I felt like whenever I would get angry, I wanted to like actually like hurt people or just like punch something or just like physically express that anger. And it just, it put me through a male puberty.
Yeah.
So it was very overwhelming to
Right.
deal with. And I think I don't know exactly how it interacted with the Zoloft, but I remember thinking, oh, these feelings of like feeling manic is because that's how my therapist actually described it. I've never been diagnosed with bipolar, but she was like, you're like scaring me. Like you're
Mm,
talking a mile a minute. You're exhibiting behavior of someone who's going through a manic episode. And I thought, oh, it must be the Zoloft,
mm,
not the testosterone. That can't have anything to do with it.
mm.
Um, and when you're manic, you kind of feel good, but it's also a very dangerous. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but what I was told is it is actually a very dangerous place to be in, and you're actually more likely to harm yourself because it makes you like make very rash decisions, and it
Mm.
makes you act much more impulsively. Um, and yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
felt that happening. So it was a really uh, strange time for me. I kind of felt
Yeah.
like I went crazy a little bit.
And the clinic administering or giving you the testosterone, they didn't say, hey, like, are you on any like mental health medications, or do you have a history of mental health? Were they
Um,
concerned at all with
I
underlying conditions?
I don't recall them asking me that.
Yeah.
No,
Well, it obviously, even if they did ask you, it didn't stop them from
no,
giving you the testosterone and celebrating your
yeah.
transition. Okay, Good Ranchers has an awesome deal going on right now for the new year. Good Ranchers is American meat delivered. All their meat is from American farms and ranches. And when you subscribe to any box, so that box meat shows up at your front door every month, they will add over 2 pounds of pre-trimmed, better than organic chicken breast to your order for free. That's almost a $200 value, $189 of free chicken added to your box when you subscribe now. Plus, when you use my code Allie, you get $20 off your first order. Use my code Allie for $20 off your first order. Go to goodranchers.com, use code Allie at checkout. That's goodranchers.com, code Allie. After you were on testosterone for a couple years, you said that you went to get a double mastectomy. At this point, you're what, 20,
Yeah,
21?
1920.
Okay, 1920. Okay.
Um, yeah, so I was looking for uh, a surgeon in Chicago who would do it. It wasn't particularly hard to find one because at this point, the whole transgender thing in culture was probably like at its peak point of acceptance at this point because Caitlyn Jenner had just come out and it was a huge, part of the social conversation.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I think at first, generally, the culture was just kind of like, okay, yeah, you do you, if like gender dysphoria, it's in the DSM-5, trans people seem to be happy. Like, so it wasn't hard to find someone. I don't think it would be now, but so I called this surgeon's office and there was a longer wait list. They couldn't get me in quickly, but that's because there were a lot of people seeking the surgery. And so I think I waited maybe 6 to 8 months before I had the consultation where she did tell me, like, you won't be able to breastfeed if you get this surgery. And I was fully operating under the assumption that I would be trans for the rest of my life. And, I would have told you that I wanted to have a family, but at the time, having biological children and breastfeeding was like not important to me at all. I was like, I'm a man. I'm not, why would I get pregnant,
Yeah.
So I probably thought that I was actually going to do surrogacy, which, I thought was just like this great thing. Also being completely ignorant of how expensive it is to do something like that. Or maybe I would adopt and, I think it takes a very, very special type of person to adopt a child. And so I wasn't really sure about that, but I was like, whatever, I'll be like 35 when I want to do that. So
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. So that's why I still decided to go through with it, despite knowing that I wouldn't be able to breastfeed.
Yeah.
And yeah, the top surgery, it was scheduled. I'm not sure how long after that consultation, maybe 4 to 6 months. And I went in and I got up really early at like 5 a.m. and went in, and my parents showed up and they were really visibly sad about it. It's makes me really sad now thinking about like what must have been going through their heads. I remember my grandmother called me the night before, and she's like the spiritual matriarch of my family. Like she passed away about a year ago, God rest her soul, but she called me crying and she asked me like, has your heart turned to stone? And I was like, just hearing that from her, I was like, man, she's never said anything like this to me before. Like, she's never sounded so desperate, and I did it anyway.
I hope you enjoyed part 1 of that conversation. Part 2 will include more about her testimony and how she came to faith in God. And so you won't want to miss that. We will be back with that segment of the conversation very soon. Thanks so much for listening and watching. We will see you again next time.